So another way of getting water to areas is by using dams and having reservoirs to have areas where we store the water. We talked a little bit about down south of Phoenix where they bank the water in the ground. We also bank water in reservoirs. And so a reservoir, remember, is that any place where we store something. And so in this case, we're storing water. So one of the benefits to having the dams is that we can also use them for hydroelectric power that we talked about in our energy resources unit. But there's some consequences to that. There's benefits and consequences pretty much to anything that we're going to do. So when we have that reservoir, we've got that large amount of water. Um, we can have the electricity that comes from the hydroelectric dam. We are going to prevent some flooding as long as there's no problems with the dam. We've all hopefully seen on the news the problems that happened with the dams in California just recently. But we also look at that because it's stored there, there's that year-round capabilities for irrigation. But we'll talk a little bit about the disruption of people and aquatic systems in a minute. So we look at our reservoir. It's great because not only is it there for crops and everything, but it's also there for recreation. We can irrigate the water as it goes through. We've looked at this once before with energy resources, how the water goes through. It spins the turbine. That's what generates the electricity. So we have to place our dams correctly because they have to be in a kind of a narrow canyon spot where we can actually put the dam um, and to complete its construction. So there's some benefits to that. Now, some downsides though is that normally sediment continues to flow downstream, and when we block that sediment, it can kind of build up behind the dam, and then we don't get that renewal of sediment downstream as well. So that can kind of be a downside to it. So the Colorado River has a lot of dams on it. When you look at the length of the Colorado River, it really does have a lot of major dams, and it has some smaller things too, but these are the major ones. And it is providing most of the water in the western part of the United States for us. We also get a lot of hydroelectric power. Not so much of that comes to Arizona. Most of it goes to other states. So here's Lake Powell. Um, and this is a huge lake, one that is a primary concern. So this is the one where I said, if lake levels start to drop, this is one of those that we look to see how that's going to impact Phoenix's water supply. So when you look at the length of the Colorado River, it's not as long as the Mississippi, it's not as big as the Mississippi, but for us here in the Western United States, it really does provide a great deal of our water resources. So here's our upper basin. You can see not as many dams in the upper basin, mostly because you're going through the Rockies, and so it's a little bit harder to actually dam in there. But once we get down into the flats, which is down here, especially as we get down south of the Grand Canyon, in these areas, you're much more likely to be able to. You also have higher centers of population and higher areas of agriculture. So there's a lot more demand for the water down in Arizona and California and also in Nevada. And all these little green things here are the major. Here's the Central Arizona Project Canal that comes off of the Colorado River. It is open to the atmosphere, and so there's a lot of evaporation that occurs. You'll see this another major dam that came into existence about 10 years ago or so is the Three Gorges Dam in China. So this one, when we talk about displacing people and displacing aquatic environments, this one was really big. For a dam to be 2 kilometers long, that's a really big dam. It's essential though for them because if you look at how many coal burning plants it's going to replace, that's a lot of energy that's going to come out of that dam as well. Um, but there's a lot of people that were displaced because as they built in the river valley, it flooded areas out, and it flooded out an area that was like from here to Los Angeles. So we're not talking about a small reservoir. We're talking about a huge reservoir, and it's so long because in some areas the canyon's kind of narrow, and so that means the water can only back up, back upstream. And so it's not necessarily really wide in all those areas. It's not 1.3 miles wide everywhere. That's on average. But it's a big dam. Some problems with it. They built it in a seismically active area. After this video, you'll see a short video about the Three Gorges Dam that I'd like you to watch as well. That'll give you a little bit better idea of the scope and the size of this particular dam. So they built it here. One was to help with shipping upstream. They can get the bigger ships upstream. There are locks that are on either side, so they have they're like ship elevators essentially. Like the ships will pull in, and then they'll flood it, and they'll raise it up, and they'll go into the next one, and they'll flood it and raise it up and stuff, so they can get around the dam and get going up the Yenisei River. Just a little picture of what it looked like before the reservoir was in there. This is from Google Earth, and this is after the dam was built. So you can see the dam is right here. This is the bypass that comes up. They always have to have a bypass that goes around the dam because if there's flooding and they have too much water behind the dam, they need a spillway, a way to release some of that water so that it doesn't damage the dam. So that's what this is coming down on the other side. Another Google Earth picture. This is the lock system coming up the side here. So this is how the ships will get up and down the river. On this side, you're looking at the hydroelectric portion of it, of the dam. So we have some areas where the Army Corps of Engineers is actually removing dams because they've determined that they're dangerous. They're old. They're some places, it was fine when they built it, but because they've been in place for so long, they're not structurally sound anymore. The dam in California that was of such large concern, the dams hold back a lot of water, and so there's that problem of what happens downstream when dams collapse. And so it can flood out whole communities and put areas, under several feet of water. And so they are definitely paying attention to how many of those dams that there are. There are some questions also from this section that are in your discussion board that are your options for discussion board.